the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Just by way of brief review, we have been talking about, as you know, the four types of law. The divine law, the eternal law. Eternal law, divine law, natural law. And the last one, positive law. Now, positive law is law that is made by human beings. However, their particular social organization is arranged, but either through a legislative branch, something like that, if you're looking at a kind of Republican democracy. But we also know that laws can be enacted by a monarch, by a tyrant, etc. In a democracy, especially a Republican democracy, it is, what are the first three words of the Constitution? What's that? Supposedly, the ultimate authority in a democratic republic rests with the sovereignty of the people. That's the way it's supposed to be, anyway. And often this is expressed through representative government. The people elect representatives on the basis of some kind of criteria, etc. And each regime or each form of a Republican democracy has its own way of lining up its elections, as you know, which is a hot debate, especially in our country today, ever since 2024 and so on and so forth and all that. It's not as easy as it once was, simply going to the polls, showing an ID, and voting, or showing a voter's card, etc. Now it's become all politicized. It's the source of all kind of great controversy. The courts are involved, unfortunately, and all this kind of stuff. And it's really a political thing. For example, right now, we're fooling with the so-called SAVE Act, which seems to be rather normal and not really something that ought to be the source of a great deal of controversy. You have to show ID, who you are, and citizenship to vote. Citizens vote. People who are not citizens don't vote on laws that do not affect them. You don't enact a law that you yourself are not subject to unless you're the United States Congress. Then you don't have any problem doing that. And the classic example of that was the so-called Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, which we know is anything but affordable. Think about it for a moment, please. You say, no, what I'm asking you to do is to use your common sense and not be bamboozled by a whole bunch of propaganda foolishness. It was the Affordable Care Act. Fine. What are they fighting in Congress about? Continuing the subsidies. Wait a minute. If it's affordable, why do you need a subsidy? I have no idea. It doesn't make sense. And the Affordable Care Act has actually raised the price and cost of medical care for many, many people. But As soon as Congress passed it, a provision in there exempted Congress from the very law they passed on other people. They didn't have to have Obamacare. Remember, you had to have Obamacare. You had to have something there. Uh, the Congress did not. Their families did not. Their staff did not. They could choose some other alternative, but the vast majority of citizens could not, uh, and so on. You never want to pass a law that you yourself are not subject to. It's the old for thee, but not for me. So, and so you have these things, but the idea here of the SAVE Act is you present two pieces of paper, which supposedly suppresses the vote. Supposedly it suppresses the vote um, because people cannot secure an ID and proof of citizenship, especially women and minorities. Now, am I led to believe that women are too stupid, too powerless, too dumb to be able to obtain an ID? The state will issue an ID. You get ID all over. You want to get on a bus, you got to have an ID. You want to get on a plane, try it. Just go down to New Orleans International, tell them you're going, and when you go through the little thing and they say, let me see your ID, and you say, oh, no, I don't need one. Yes, okay. Let us know what prison you're now residing in. Are you serious? All these things you need ID for. You want to buy, I don't know, you want to buy alcohol, you want to buy cigarettes, you want to get on a bus, you want to do this and that. Try getting in a government building without an ID. Good luck with that. No. And 84% of the American people, 71% of Democrats, 90-something% of Republicans think that this is a good idea to have citizens vote in an election affecting the country. That's controversial. Okay. It gives you some idea of where we are. That's controversial. So the idea of this has become very complicated, more so than it has been in years past, but such is the climate of so much of what goes on today. So you have that. You have a democratic republic where the ultimate sovereignty is in the people, in representative government, and that key point, especially in American history, that affected the Revolutionary War, very important concept, consent. You cannot be taxed without your consent, representation, so on and so forth. We know that that really doesn't apply anymore. There's all kind of things that go on that you may not agree with, but you're taxed for it. Let's suppose, and for example, you are an opponent of abortion. Just suppose you are. Whatever you are. Let's just say you are. Well, your tax dollars go to Planned Parenthood, the largest provider of abortion in the United States. You say, well, I'm not going to pay part of that tax because I don't agree with that. Well, you can do that, but you can get, again, 3 hots and a cot. But you don't agree with it. And the theory is you can't pick and choose what you want and what you don't want, etc. And what happens there then is you have the rise of what we might call sanctuary cities, where the supremacy clause is lost. And if you really want to get people who are in favor of sanctuary cities, are just crazy beyond belief. You know, it's like Dracula in the presence of the host or the cross. Bring up the word nullification. Nullification goes all the way back to Civil War, because that's the theory that the South withdrew from the Union, nullification. They don't want to hear that word, see, because the South said, uh, our laws, our laws are the laws that govern us as we see fit. There is in the Constitution a thing called the Supremacy Clause. Supremacy Clause says that when federal government, federal law comes in conflict with state law or local law, federal law triumphs because it's the highest law, it's the law of the land. Okay? Nullification says no, no. Our state laws are the laws specifically for us, and we can pick and choose the laws we want. Well, we fought a civil war over that because if every state does what it wants, so on and so forth, you don't have the United States of America. You back to a confederacy again. Everybody does what it wants. Well, you don't have a union. You don't have a union. See, obviously. And so these things today have become quite contentious and quite difficult, whereas once upon a time they seemed fairly easy and so on and so forth. The consent question was a big one. No taxation without representation. And that was more than a slogan. They actually fought the war over that because the Stamp Act and various other taxes that were put upon the colonies from England, the colonists had no say-so, had no say-so. And that flamed their rebellion, if you will, their revolution against the rule of a government far across the ocean. And they could do that, but nobody from the colonies were either in the House of Lords or the House of Commons. So they had no say. They had no say. And the way in which these laws were carried out were quite, let's say, brutal at times. So you have this. So this first way is the way of democracy. Then you have a monarchy. The rule or law comes down through heredity, through heredity. And it is related to a king or a queen, some royalty that makes the laws, etc. That's what it does. And again, this very much limits that and depends upon the monarchy, because there's where absolute power resides here, and they even developed the doctrine of the divine right of kings. The divine right of kings. So what they did was they said, not only is the king through heredity, but the king or the monarchy or who's ever in charge, they're in charge because they have been anointed or appointed by God. Now, you want to argue with that? You want to argue with God? And so on and so forth like that. So you have those things that take place. So notice this is a favorite tactic of those in power. They want to wrap themselves into God or something sacred or something holy. Therefore, what you're really doing, if you rebel or you object or you protest, you're really protesting against God and God's elect. That's what happens. Certainly not a democracy. Certainly not a democracy. Then you have An oligarchy, which has become quite fashionable in the lexicon today, used by some political groups, and so on and so forth. I'm not sure they know what it means, but anyway, an oligarchy is the rule of the few at the expense of the many. The rule of the few, an oligarchy, what it is. It's a few, in other words, it's the 1%, you've heard of that, over the 99%. The 1% of the haves, the power elite, if you will, and the rule. Okay? So it is rule of a special elite group. It's the elite. It's elitism. Okay? And that's an oligarchy. And then the other one is tyranny, tyrant. That is the rule of one who is absolute, and it's usually on the basis of power or force, power or force. And these are the various ones. Now, Aristotle, um, Aristotle favored a constitutional monarchy. And they found this democracy one of the worst kinds of government. Democracy was the worst kind of government, especially direct democracy. One person, one vote. You vote, you add them up at the end, and you see what happens. Their objection to that is that you often don't get the best and the brightest. You don't get the cream of the crop. You get people who are able to finagle elections, have connections, all of that sort of stuff. And what democracy often turns into, unchecked by law, it turns into mob rule. It turns into mob rule. And that's always the danger of a democracy. The people become a law unto themselves in the form of a mob. The constitutional monarchy is one in which the monarchy rules, but the monarchy rules under the law of the Constitution and is not above it. In other words, a strict monarchy, they make the rules, but they don't have to obey them because they're the rule maker. A constitutional monarchy, we have a constitutional democratic republic. Supposedly, you've heard it now ad nauseum, the past couple of years, no one is above the law. Okay. No one is above the law. Why? Because the law reigns supreme, and the supreme law of the land is the Constitution of the United States. That's the supreme law of the land. It trumps all the other laws, and hence you supposedly have an independent judiciary which interprets whether or not the laws are in conformity with the Constitution, passed on by the electors to represent the will of the people. That's the idea. And so you have separation of powers, you have that, and that's an attempt to make sure that power does not become concentrated in any one branch of government, so itself becomes tyrannical. That's one of the great advances of the American Constitution was the separation of power. Separation of power. Everyone is supposed to stay in their own lane. We've seen that has wiggled back and forth through history. The executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. So these are the types of government. Thomas Aquinas favored some form of constitutional monarchy. And Plato, remember, Plato's government is interesting. Plato understood the government structure, not surprisingly here though, as a pyramid. As a pyramid. It was a pyramid. At the top of the pyramid were the kings, royalty, regals. He used the allegory that these were born filled with gold. They were made out of gold, a kind of imagery. In the middle here, the second layer, were the guardians. These were the guardians. And they were made of iron. They were made of iron, steel. And down here were the masses of people. And they were made either of tin or bronze. Now, the guardians were in the middle here in order to protect the kings from the revolt of the masses. Because at some point, the masses get tired of the privilege of the kings and the rich and the elite and so on, and they rebel. Now, one of the most significant issues facing this country, and one that you don't hear talked about, because you have to have people who go on television, especially these so-called news experts and so on and so forth. They have to understand things about economics, class, etc. One of the great dangers to America, we talk about Iran, atomic bombs, China, Russia, all this other kind of stuff. One of the most significant dangers to the United States loss of the middle class. And before you start yawning, reaching for no-dos, that's incredibly significant, especially in a capitalist society. You see, because as this shrinks, and it has shrunk greatly, what you end up having are two classes. The trapped down here and the insulated up here. That's a prescription for revolution and rebellion. Because when you have a vibrant middle class, there is the hope that you can have social mobility. You can move up. That's what you can do. You can move down. But you're not in a caste system. You're not held in any one position. This is the genius of a capitalist system. And Americans love that. We love that story. Humble beginnings to what? President of the United States. We like to say that. Anybody can be president of the United States. And most of the ones who hold it are proof. Anyway, you have that. But without social mobility, you are sowing the seeds of revolution and rebellion. Because I don't have any hope of getting out of this. I am forever in this kind of stuff. I'm in this socioeconomic condition and I'm trapped in it. I'm trapped in it. That breeds resentment, social unrest, and it is the perfect seedbed for those who want to overthrow a government. Watch what happens. I mean, just turn on your television for a moment and hear the groups that are talking about this kind of stuff and see. We have a loss of wages. We're shrinking take-home pay. The money is concentrated at the top. It's not flowing down. Cost of living is up. Real wages are down, so on. But we're seeing a reverse of that. You better pay special attention to your middle class. That is the buffer, not guardians with soldiers and tanks and all of that. Not that kind of stuff. It is a vibrant, real middle class where I know that I have a reasonable chance if I study, I save, I work, I obey the law, I'm a decent human being, etc. I can live a pretty good, decent life in this country. Yeah, I love these people who say the United States is so terrible and all this other sort of stuff. Horrible and all of this. Why are you coming here? It's counterintuitive. The country that has the most immigrants every year, sorry, the United States. And all of these things about how terrible the United States is. Immigration is not a problem for North Korea, by the way. There are not too many people trying to break into North Korea or many other countries. Sorry. Now, we don't like statistics, I understand. But the statistical fact is they have an emigration problem. People want to get out. They don't have an immigration problem. People want to get out of those places. That's why I hear all of this. Now we hear all of a sudden Rosie O'Donnell, I think she's an actress or something. Anyway, she declared that she was moving to Ireland because if Trump became president again, this was going to be Armageddon, the end of the world. Chicken Little, the sky was falling and everything else. And she packed up and moved to Ireland. Well, you don't like this country? Can you pack up and move to Ireland and get a house there and all that? Can you do that? I doubt it. But now it was announced today that she has decided to come. And she says, but I'll only be here for 2 weeks. I just want to see the family. Oh, okay. Can she come back? Absolutely. She can leave and she can come back. She can say anything she wants about the country. Anything about the president. She's not arrested. She's not thrown in jail. She's not tortured. She's not any of those things. She can do that. Go do that in China, these other places, if you can get out. In China, you can't even get your money out anymore to invest. Money is locked into China. Now, the only thing they let out was people with COVID, people around the world. They let them out. We don't want to say that because we might offend the Chinese government. So the shrinking middle class is a very, very serious problem. Oh, it may not affect you. May not affect me, certainly. I'm older than most of you. It may very well affect your grandchildren. It's rapidly maybe affecting your children. I don't know how old they are. That's not the point. The point is that is a seedbed for revolution and rebellion. And the tyrants, the agitators, the revolutionaries, the chaotic people, they love when the middle class shrinks. Shrink that middle class. Shrink it and shrink it. Because you get more and more recruits. More and more recruits for fermenting disorder and rebellion in the republic among the people. So the laws we pass, from the Catholic Church standpoint and from the standpoint of biblical teaching, is grounded in the common good. Common good. Laws should reflect the common good. Now, I'm assuming that you have your catechism, because common good is one of those, if you don't, well, too bad. Is one of those terms that are thrown around today especially in religious circles, especially with Catholics. Oh, it's good. It's the common good. We got to give it for the common good. Say, well, what is the common good? Well, I don't know. It's everybody gets it. Everybody gets what? Everybody gets it? You mean nobody doesn't get it? I would suggest you look in the index of your catechism under the glossary, under the C's, under the C's. I don't know what edition you have and all that sort of stuff, but that's somewhat of a problem, but not insurmountable. Oh, see, common good. Vocation, union, well, not in this thing. Never mind. Yeah. What's that? 796 in that one. Yeah, 796 in the index. 1906. Let's look at 1906. Yeah, the 1906 is the, what's that? 1906 is the black number on the side. Yes, please. 1906. See if that's it. They list a number of things there. The other. The common good, 1906. 1906. If you could look at that, please. It's the in your catechism. It's 1906 is the dark number, and it's in Article 2, participation in social life. I don't know what edition you have. I don't know what edition you have, but it's under the section. There's authority, and then the second section is the common good. Did everyone kind of find that? Who wants it? Did everyone hear that? Okay, just if you wanted. Okay. It says the common good. Keeping with the social nature of man, the good of each individual is necessarily related to the common good, which in turn can be defined only in reference to the human person. Now, what they're saying there is that the common good is important because what is the nature of the human being? Is the nature of the human being individualistic or communitarian? Communitarian. Why? How do you know that? How do you know that? Hmm? Why? Why is that? But where in the Bible do you get this idea? The lady rightfully said it relates to God, social, and so on. How do you know that? See, that's what I mean. Not you. They're very good. You brought us far. But we throw these terms around, common good, and when somebody says, "Well, what does that mean?" See, R is not a language, and certainly not an answer. So we have these. We're so used today in 30-second sound bites and bumper stickers on the back of cars with these little stupid slogans, which seems to say so much and say so little, because when pressed by somebody, well, what do you mean by the common good? You keep talking about it, so obviously you must know, and they can't give you an answer. Well, I mean, why are people supposed to take you seriously? I mean, if you can't define a linchpin term, why should anyone take you seriously in what you have to say? You don't know your terms. Why does God give Adam a companion? Why does God give Adam a companion? How? What do you mean? Fulfill his life. You mean he wasn't better off? Wait. Take it easy. Take it easy. Don't attack me. Just wait a moment. Then you can hear that. What I want to know is, well, I, I had a thought there, but with all the screaming and see why democracy is no good. See, classic example. It gets the mobs. It gets the juices flowing. Why? You said because it wasn't any good or something like that, Marie. You mean he? Wait, Marie. Wait. Hold on. When I answer you, you would be disqualified from Jeopardy because you got to let the question all the way through you. Um, the whole question is now I can't remember the question, but anyway, do you mean that Adam was not well off when he didn't have Eve? Oh, what these things? What did you say? And what did God say? What, it is not good for man to be alone. It's right in the beginning of the book of Genesis, for God's sake. It's right there. I mean, we've read it a million times. Because the person is social by nature. Well, if it's social by nature, then the common good is something that is reflective. It's natural. It's part of our humanity. And it's unnatural to live isolated, individualistic, and so on, in which we see everyone else as either a competitor, a stranger, an enemy, or this or that. It's what Thomas Hobbes, the great, some people consider to be the father of modern philosophy. I don't. But anyway, a lot of people do, and they're smarter than I am, so go with that if you want. It's in his famous political treatises, The Leviathan. He talks about the state of nature, in which it is a situation of all against all. Everybody's against everybody. See, that's what it is. The state of nature. And in order to, in which everybody is at war with everybody else. Well, finally, human beings come around to the consciousness that this is not a good way to live. We don't want to live with war of all against all. We don't get anything done. We're more productive together than we are alone. So what do? They come to that consciousness, the evolution of their brain, etc., and they develop a government. But what is the government? They raise up one person to be the supreme ruler who governs everybody and everything. And the people submit to this. They submit to this. Why? Because they're willing to trade their freedom for security. Now, if that doesn't sound familiar to you today, you got to be living under a rock. Today we have this idea, freedom or security. See, we want both. But there's something inherent now in the world that if you want freedom, you're going to have to sacrifice some security. I mean, if you want freedom, if you want security, you're going to have to sacrifice some freedom. You say no? No? I'll tell you what, go to the airport. Go ahead, go to the airport with all your junk and stuff like this, and go tell TSA or whatever they call themselves now, and tell them you're not going to check the bags because you don't want to do that because you have a constitutional right to your junk. I guarantee you're not getting through, other than maybe spending some time in Leavenworth. You sacrifice that. You take off your shoes, except if you're 70 or 75. They don't want you taking off your shoes. I don't know if that's because of the odor of your feet or because they're afraid you're going to fall. I'm not sure which it is. Either way, it's a humanitarian. You go through these things, detective. They wind you down like this. Some people, they pull out of the line, and you have to go into some room and get all squared away, so on and so forth. Like that. And we say, okay, it's annoying, this and that, but I'm going to do it because of security. Because to get some nut on a plane with a bomb is not a good idea. So Hobbes starts out with the idea that if you want security, you put all the power and control into one person or to one group, and you trade that for your freedom. Because you have to be under the control, absolute control of that group, etc. And many people see what you have today is what? The creeping encroachment of government into the life of individuals. The administrative state, the bureaucratic state, not elected. Do we realize how much of our life is controlled by bureaucrats? People you never voted for, never elected, never talked to, never seen. And you have the explosion of the regulatory state. What was one of Trump's key economic programs? Deregulation. That was just this week, folks. The big announcement this week, I mean, with the EPA. To cut back all of those environmental things that were ineffective, that everybody had to have an electric car, whatever year it was. And you had to have all these things on your car. Well, they rolled those regulations back and said, no, they no longer apply. Now it's estimated that perhaps between $3,000 and a little more, the price of a new car has gone down because they don't have to do this. They don't have to do this because they showed statistically that it wasn't true science, it was science fiction. But these were regulators putting these things on. Deregulation is a tremendous cost of increased pricing and inflation. Am I saying we should have no regulation? Of course not. As soon as we get something bad, we want to immediately run to the Consumer Protection Agency. But it's to be realistic. It is always up to a limit. See, there is the real rub in government or anything else. What do you do up to the limit, and what is that limit? That's why the first virtue of a politician, a good politician, and look, Aristotle considered a politician one of the noblest of all professions, all callings, especially the legislator. Why? Because the legislator passed the laws, and the laws had to be prudent. They had to be prudent, good judgment, etc. And these legislators, so, we need prudent legislators, prudent judges. When you go to law school, I taught one of the first courses you take is a course in jurisprudence. Jurisprudence. The study of the various schools of thought, how you interpret and enact laws. And there's a list of 4 or 5 predominant schools today. We're not going to go into that. That's not the point. The point is the very notion of judicial prudence, jurisprudence, good judgment, sound judgment in looking at cases. For the legislator, it's enacting laws that are prudent and not overburdensome. Many people today have laws enacted upon them that cause severe damage to the very institutions and things that they should be helping, namely the middle class with small businesses. You have the rise of these corporations, these big, huge corporations today. And they're getting more and more concentrated. And if you read if you read the Federalist Papers, and if you read the magnificent note-taking and minutes that was done by James Madison, read them. Look, I had law students that didn't know what the Federalist Papers were. It's not as hard as that is to believe. It's incredible to me. But okay, some of them didn't know what the Constitution was. Really. There's a great story. I know this is one of these digressions you don't like to complain about. The great Associate Justice of the Supreme Court, magnificent Catholic, blessed, I know he's in heaven. There's a son who's a priest in Virginia, Antonin Scalia. And Scalia was debating Justice Kennedy, Joseph Kennedy, in the Supreme Court, both supposed to be conservative. Scalia is what's called an originalist, and Kennedy believes in the living Constitution. And Scalia went to the podium when his turn. He says, I really object to this because I'm starting at a great disadvantage. He says, the great Justice, Joe there, he gets to defend a living Constitution, and I get to defend a dead Constitution. He said, I don't think it's dead. But he said, I'll tell you about the living Constitution. He said, it reminds me of my mother and father. He said, being an Italian, he's very, very proud. And right. Every Sunday, they would have Sunday dinner. And there was always meatballs, spaghetti, lasagna, always in a homemade Italian sauce and all of it. And this particular Sunday, as they all gathered, and they better gather, for the Sunday dinner after Mass, Mrs. Scalia, grandmother, the matriarch of this whole bunch, she committed the unpardonable sin. She forgot to get several of the ingredients necessary for the sauce that her husband just loved, and everybody loved it. She had a jar under the shelf of ragu. So he takes the ragu, puts it in there while they're all in the front talking and everything. Puts it in there. And they all come in and they sit down. And the old man says, this tastes funny. I don't taste the tomato chocolate that I want. And my mother said, it's in there. I don't taste the onions. It's in there. I'm missing the parsley and the various, and some celery. Things like, it's in there. He said, that's exactly what we've done to the Constitution. It's in there. You'll find it. Just make up anything you want. You want abortion? It's in there. You want to control the EPA? It's in there. You want to control it? It's in there. That's all we do. And so Justice Kennedy, I might say with all respect, should be shown great reverence for his defense of the living Constitution, because of those of you who want it, you will find whatever you want in it, so don't worry. So you can see I don't have a prayer in this particular setting. And it's that kind of thing, you see. No. What's the intent of the legislator? What was the intent? Well, in order to do that, you have to go back and read the debate, because they keep minutes and so on and so forth. They don't want to do that. They want to give their own social philosophy, their own social science, their own politics in there. So you want legislators and executives that don't overreach. You don't want an imperial president. You don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want an imperial judiciary or legislative branch. And you know, it's fast. We don't want a king. No, we don't want a king. We made that clear right from the start. We don't want that. We want a republic and democracy. We the people. Three most important words. We the people. Thank you. Thank you. But the John Adams, one of the great underappreciated. Look, John Adams was not a likable person. Okay, you would not invite him to the Mardi Gras. You wouldn't invite him to Sunday dinner. You wouldn't invite him to Christmas or any of that. But he was one of the great, brilliant analysts and contributors to the Constitution. Unfortunately, he was not at the Constitutional Convention because he was serving the country as ambassador to France at the time. But he kept great notes. He wrote 2 volumes. You say that to law students. He wrote 2 of the best volumes, commentary on the Constitution of the United States, reflections on the United States Constitution, 2 volumes, magnificent analysis, and what the founders really wanted. And read the notes. See, James Madison, the so-called father of the Constitution, they had appointed somebody to take the minutes. And after a couple of days, Madison was so disgusted with this person because they were terrible. Actually horrible. They took what they didn't, it was horrible. And Madison said, "Get out." And he took it over. And his note, not his notes, his minutes of the debate, the point. You talk about a high level of debate about ideas, about consequences, and all that. Not you're a bum, you're a thief, you're this or that, you're a pervert. Kind of crazy stuff. My God, you have people today who are talking about we ought to have another constitutional convention. Oh my God, please, unless you're really crazy. Can you imagine today with a constitutional convention? Not me. I'll take Adams and Franklin and Jefferson and the whole bunch of that. The so-called the Miracle at Philadelphia. Great book. Great book. You should read that. Miracle at Philadelphia. And to see it was really the age of genius. And these people, most of them were in their mid to upper 20s. Read it. Read. Don't go on a computer and all this stuff. Get the text and read it and study about it and see. The people that blab on television have no sense of historical memory. Their memory is the latest thing they read on their computer screen, the latest, whatever you call it, email blob or something, and then delete, and then they on that's it. It's incredible. Incredible. So the idea of this common good is central to a free government and also a moral government, not for the few, but for the common good. So let's see what it says. Because the human being is a social being. It says, do not live entirely isolated, having retreated into yourselves as if you were already justified, but gather instead to seek the common good together. Seek the common good together. That's from the Epistle of Barnabas. By common good is to be understood, okay, we have 3 elements to the common good. I'm going to go over them quickly. You see them right there. First, the common good presupposes respect for the person as such. It begins in respect for each human person. That's the first thing of the common good, because the person is made in the image and likeness of God. And to disrespect the person is to, in fact, disrespect and is a rejection of God. In the name of the common good, public authorities are bound to respect the fundamental and inalienable rights, that is, rights that are given by God, not by the state, not by government, not by a bank or anything else, or by birth or by power, but they come with the fact that you are a human being. You're born with them. Life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness among them. Okay? Authorities are bound to respect the fundamental inalienable rights of human persons. Society should permit each of its members to fulfill his vocation. In particular, the common good resides in the conditions for the exercise of the natural freedom indispensable for the development of the human vocation, such as the right to act according to a sound norm of conscience and to safeguard privacy and rightful freedom also in matters of religion. Now, you've heard in the last few days, a week, a great deal of discussion about the right of free speech by this guy. He's named after something on a tree, Lemon, something like that. Don Lemon, he used to be something on television. He's a sour, nonetheless. He's the one who went with a bunch of people and disrupted the religious services a couple of weeks ago, claiming to be a journalist and did so in the name of free speech. That's so asinine. But, he's all over the news. He's the one who got kicked off of CNN because of his behavior and so on, public knowledge, and so on like that. And he keeps claiming that the first right is the right of free speech. Obviously, he's completely ignorant of the Constitution, has never read it. It's not the first right. What is the first right? What is the first right? What is the first right in the Constitution, in the Bill of Rights? What is the first one? Freedom of religion, freedom to worship. Folks, you got to know this stuff. Not for me. My God. You don't know what the first right is, and some jackass comes along and tells you, well, why can't somebody from Louisiana tell you the first right in the Constitution that's insoluble is the right to carry a gun? They probably believe. Yeah, it's not. It's not the first. It's not the first. Free speech is not the first. It is the right in conscience to worship. My God, if we don't know that, how do we expect people on television to know that? I mean, come on. I know you're saying, well, he's berating us. No, I'm not. Giving you a pep talk. Coach it half. So you get the idea. Rightful freedom in matters of religion. Read your Constitution. Second, the common good requires the social well-being and development of the group itself. The group itself, not some individual, not some special person, not some special group, but we look for the good of the greatest number. How do we affect the well-being of all people in the group as much as possible? We can't please all the people all the time. We understand that. You may not be pleased over who's in the White House. Okay, you still pay your taxes, you still vote, you do this and that, and your turn will come again next time. Okay, that's what we accept. But it's the group, not simply some individual that rises and say, I'm special, I get all the privileges you don't. We find that repulsive and repugnant. Development is the epitome of all social duties. Development, yes. Human development. That's very important. You want people to develop their humanity, to become fully alive, and to eradicate all of those things which stunt human development. Living conditions, wages, health in the workplace, working conditions, a working wage, a working salary, so that you can live well. Notice I did not say live extravagantly. Live well has that which helps you to flourish as a human being. What is that? I don't know. You have to decide that. What is your situation? Somebody who has 3 children may have a very different situation than somebody who has no children, or somebody who has 6 or 7 children. But notice, please, what we call this. We call this same in kind, different in degree. What does that mean? Well, what it means is this. Let's see. Do you need food to live? Yes, you do. Does all human beings, really creatures, need food or nourishment to live? Yes. The same in kind. We need food. Do all human beings need the same kind, the same amount, the same degree, and the same menu? No. Somebody who is a bodybuilder, I used to be once. All right, that does nothing for my self-esteem. I'm going to go run in front of a float tomorrow. Okay. Then you all will be sorry. Yeah, right. Yeah, right. That person who's a football player, or maybe a person who is very slender and may have, if they had an operation on the stomach and they have part of their stomach removed, they still need food, but they can't absorb the same amount. They can't absorb the same degree. So human development is essential. We all need to develop as human beings to fulfill our humanity. But it's a difference in degree and what that means. What that means. Some people live very meagerly and are very happy, and they're happy they got the essentials of what they want. Others may be in a high-powered position where they have responsibilities and things. What is their situation? Well, they have to know that. But they still have to develop. So the common good is about that which helps develop the community, the society, but not all to the same degree. Not all to the same degree. Somebody who, let's say, works in a very tedious job from 9 to 5, etc., and somebody who works as an executive in a bank or something, or some corporation. The way in which they reach that fulfillment is very different because the situation is different. What the banker needs, the guy who's doing the tedious job in the factory doesn't need all that, doesn't need it. But they need that fulfillment. So the common good means we want to do that which fulfills the human being. As the church fathers used to say, the glory of God is the human person fully alive. The glory of God is the human person fully alive. God's glory is for us to be fully alive, fully developed. Not to lag, not to be deprived and suffer and be wounded in our humanity. That's why we have the corporal and spiritual works of mercy, which we're going to touch into before we get up. Maybe. So we have that. The proper function of authority is to attribute in the name of the common good between various particular interests, but it should make accessible to each what is needed to lead a truly human life: food, clothing, health, work, education, and culture, suitable information, the right to establish a family, and so on. These are fundamental rights for human development. They're basic to human beings. And the common good, finally, requires peace. The stability and security of a just social order. The fruit of justice is peace. You cannot have peace if you don't have justice. If treating people unjustly, you're going to have difficulty. It presupposes that authorities should ensure by morally acceptable means, the security of society and its members. It is the basis of the right to legitimate personal and collective defense. So you want to establish peace, but always there, in terms of that which promotes peace, the good, but it's also by morally acceptable means. You can establish a lot of peace. Just go around and declare go down and declare martial law. You have peace. You don't have much of a civil society. That's what you want to do. No. The fruit of justice is peace. That's what goes to. And notice those things are very wide open. That's why you have to have prudence. What are these legitimate means? Well, they certainly are different right now in Minneapolis, Minnesota, than they are down in Coral Gables, Florida. Very different. Because what you got in Minnesota, leave it to your interpretation. And what you have, the situation in Florida, is very different. But they do have the need for just order that yields peace. And what are those means? We're going to go into that because it involves two very important principles, which I would like you to look up next time, please. Catholic principles. Number one, the principle of subsidiarity, and second, the principle of solidarity. So look up those two principles for next time. They're in your catechism. And then we'll end this and move on to the law as it relates to the Bible. But you have to understand we live in a civil society, and that our Bible and our Catholic Christian principles affect the social order, the civil order. We're also citizens. We also have responsibilities. So we don't just come into the church and that's it. No, you get out of here and you go out into the larger world and you're expected to be a good citizen, as you should be. Contribute to the common good. Now at least we have some idea what that means. But that's what we want to do. So, anyway, so if you would look that up for next time, and then we'll actually get into the question of law in the Bible. What's that? Subsidiarity? Subsidiarity. Yes, it's in the Bible. I'm not yelling at the lady. She's the acoustics of this world-class operation. Subsidiarity and solidarity. Two very important principles dealing with Catholic social teaching. If you don't get any other principles down, get those two down, please. Subsidiarity and solidarity. And you will be a very happy person. You will make your neighbors happy. Your family will love you once again. You'll get something for Christmas. You may be even invited to Thanksgiving. I don't know, maybe that's overreach. I don't know how you act at Thanksgiving. But anyway, all right. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Almighty and gracious God, we offer you glory, praise, and thanksgiving for your gift of this time together. Please come, Holy Spirit, come. Please dwell in us. Open our mind and our heart. Clear our visions and our hearing, that we may truly follow your word and you each day you give. We ask you to please grant us your grace, that each day, which is your gift, we may serve you, strengthen the church, and care for others, all in your name and by your grace. Please keep us safe in our return